Did you know that one miscommunication during a press conference changed the course of history? The fall of the Berlin Wall was not just a moment of celebration, it served as a strong reminder of how the longing for freedom can break down even the toughest barrier. Why the Berlin Wall was built. To understand the fall of the Berlin Wall, we first have to ask, why was it built at all? After World War II, Germany was split into two parts. The West adopted democracy, allowing the economy to grow and giving people more freedom. But in the East, ruled by the Soviets, there were strict rules, not enough goods, and limited freedom. Life was tough, and many East Germans wanted to escape. Here's an interesting fact. In 1960, more than 200,000 East Germans had already fled to the West to find a better life. Most of them were young, educated professionals. This large number of people leaving was a big problem for East Germany's economy and its future. So what did the East German government do to get rid of this? They built the Berlin Wall. On August 13, 1961, soldiers started blocking the border between East and West Berlin, turning the city into a barrier overnight. What began as a barbed wire fence quickly became a concrete wall. The purpose? To stop people from leaving and keep control of the population. How would you have responded in that chaos if your city were suddenly divided in two? What actions would you take to navigate life behind the Berlin Wall? Stay with us to hear the real stories of those who lived it. Life in divided Berlin. What was it really like to live in a city physically divided by concrete and barbed wire? The Berlin Wall didn't just separate a city, it broke up families, friendships, and futures. When the wall was built in 1961, lives changed instantly. Thousands of families were split apart, with loved ones unable to see each other for years. People lost their jobs because they could no longer travel between different parts of the city. East Germans were trapped in their own country, cut off from the freedom and opportunities in the West. The wall's cost wasn't just emotional, it was deadly. More than 130 people lost their lives trying to escape from the East. One of the first victims was Ida Siekmann. Just days after the wall went up on August 22, 1961, she tried to escape by jumping from her third-floor apartment window. Sadly, she didn't survive the fall, but her death proved just how desperate East Germans were to find freedom. For the next 28 years, the Berlin Wall became a powerful symbol of the Cold War. It represented the divide between two completely different worlds, democracy and economic growth in the West, and repression and struggle in the East. Every day, East Berliners saw the freedoms they couldn't reach, blocked by the wall, always reminding them they couldn't be free. The cracks begin to show. The 1980s. By the 1980s, East Germany's communist government was starting to fall apart. But what started the events that led to the Berlin Wall coming down? It all started with the reforms of Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev. In the mid-1980s, Gorbachev introduced two important policies: glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. These changes planned to make the government more transparent and revive the struggling Soviet economy. While the goal was to improve communism, the effect on Eastern Europe was much bigger. Gorbachev's policies weakened Soviet control, and for the first time in years, people under communist rule saw a chance for change. In East Germany, the impact was huge. People started demanding the same changes they saw happening in other Eastern Bloc countries. When neighboring countries like Hungary eased their border controls, East Germans saw a chance to escape. Many people escaped using new routes through Hungary to Austria and eventually into West Germany. This wave of people leaving put massive pressure on the East German government, but it wasn't just about leaving. The people who chose to stay began protesting in the streets, demanding change. Huge protests were recorded across East Germany, especially in Leipzig and East Berlin. Even when longtime leader Erich Honecker resigned in October 1989, it wasn't enough to calm the unrest. The message was clear: East Germans were done with life behind the wall. The protests, along with the growing number of people fleeing the country, made it impossible for the government to stay in control. The cracks got worse every day, and the wall was about to fall. The press conference that changed everything. A simple press conference caused the Berlin Wall to fall, but how did this regular event lead to such a major change? On November 9, 1989, a quickly arranged press conference took place in East Berlin featuring Gunnar Schabowski, a high-ranking official in East Germany's ruling Socialist Unity Party. During the conference, Schabowski was asked about the long-standing travel ban that kept East Germans from going to the West. In a moment that would change history, he mistakenly announced that East Germans could now cross the border into West Berlin immediately. This surprising announcement sent shockwaves through the audience and beyond. Schabowski's words were broadcast to millions, creating a wave of hope among East Germans who had been dreaming of freedom. After spreading Schabowski's statement, thousands of East Germans hurried to the Berlin Wall, excited to see if the borders would really open. Border guards, caught off guard by the sudden crowd and unsure of how to react. Many were confused by the announcement and chose to let people go through. That night, for the first time in 28 years, people could move freely between East and West. East Berliners and West Berliners hugged each other, celebrating their long-awaited reunion. The global impact of the Wall's fall. The fall of the Berlin Wall wasn't just a win for Germany, it marked a global turning point that changed the political landscape of Europe. The Wall's collapse signaled the beginning of the end of the Cold War. For nearly 30 years, it had stood as a strong symbol of the divide between the capitalist West and the communist East. Its fall showed that the Soviet system was failing and that the people's desire for freedom could overcome years of oppression. Within a year of the Wall's fall, Germany was officially reunified on October 3, 1990. However, this reunification came with many challenges. Merging two very different economies and social systems was very complicated. The Berlin Wall came down, but its legacy isn't over. While the physical barrier collapsed under the people's desire for freedom, the mental divide it created still affects many lives today. Even now, the Wall is remembered as a strong symbol of oppression, strength, and the fight for liberty. The pain of separation remains in the hearts of those who lived through it, and the challenges of reunion are still felt. We should ask ourselves, what other walls, whether physical or mental, still exist in our world today? Are there barriers that divide us not just by location, but also by beliefs, race, or social class? As we consider the lessons from the fall of the Berlin Wall, we are reminded to face these divisions. If this story inspired you to imagine the power we all hold to break down the walls in our own lives and communities, let's continue the conversation. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe for more fascinating historical insights, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Next week, we'll dive into another incredible moment of history that reshaped the world. Don't miss it!